In HBO's The Gilded Age Season 3, Caroline Astor stands as the ultimate moral judge of New York society, casting out divorced women left and right with ruthless precision. When the fictional Aurora Fane faces divorce, Mrs. Astor immediately shuns her. When her own real-life daughter, Charlotte, heads towards scandal and divorce, she's horrified by that note of scandal it would bring to respectable society. And this was a real-life situation. But the real Caroline Astor's fierce crusade against divorced women was built on the most spectacular hypocrisy imaginable. And it's playing out pretty well off-screen. By that, I mean, while Caroline is running around Manhattan, judging everyone and their spouses, have you noticed who we haven't seen yet? Mr. Astor. Where's her damn husband? Yes, Caroline's own marriage was a complete disaster, a public humiliation that she endured for decades while maintaining the facade that kept her in power. And as for her daughter, Charlotte, I'm going to show you how badly she had it in for her. When Caroline's husband, Charlotte's own father, passed away, Caroline said that it was because of Charlotte's horrible marriage that was headed for divorce. I'll show you exactly what she said in an 1892 newspaper. So let's talk about it. But first, if you like these stories about the most scandalous people from history, please subscribe for more, and thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Now let's rip into this Gilded Age mean girl. Caroline Webster Schermerhorn was born into New York's oldest Dutch aristocracy in 1830. Her family had been in Manhattan for 2 centuries, making them true Knickerbocker royalty. The Schermerhorns looked down on newer families as vulgar social climbers, which made her 1853 marriage to William Backhouse Astor Jr. a bitter pill for them to swallow. So yes, the same way that the TV show portrays Mrs. Astor and her old money crew looking down on families like the Vanderbilts and the fictional Russells, that was the same way that families like the Schermerhorns treated the Astors. So the truth was that Caroline married into new money herself, but this is only the beginning of her hypocrisy when it comes to her marriage. Despite the Astor fortune being absolutely massive, $50 million compared to the Schermerhorns' not even $1 million, Caroline knew that she was stooping to marry new money. But the fact was that she didn't have any better prospects than William. The Astors had built their wealth through fur trading and real estate, actually having to work to earn their fortune. Caroline was born into a good family name and fortune of about $500,000, and according to her, that's the way it was supposed to have been done. Just be born rich. Working is so pedestrian. William was also the second son of the family, and that meant that he would inherit less money than his older brother, but that was still way more than Caroline's family had. Caroline's mother wanted the richest possible husband for her daughter, and Caroline didn't exactly have male suitors lined up at her door. Caroline was tall and big-boned, and she wasn't considered a beauty, and she didn't seem to have a lot else going on for her. She wasn't praised for being charming or particularly smart. Julian Fellowes, the creator and writer of The Gilded Age, did extensive research on Caroline Astor, and in a number of interviews, he said that he knew that she wasn't a great beauty, and he was not able to find anything that she ever said or did that was remarkable or witty or funny. Actually, in the middle of recording this part of the script, I went and found his interview from the first episode of the first season of The Gilded Age of HBO's podcast, and this is a direct quote from him. He said, "I've searched and searched, and she wasn't a beauty, and I've never found a single funny thing she said or wrote." End quote from him. He had a truly hard time understanding how she became the queen of society. So if we can trust his research, and I do, we're led to believe that Caroline was just a plain girl from a family with a big fortune and a bigger name. So when William Backhouse Astor proposed marriage, Caroline's mother gladly accepted. Her undesirable daughter was able to snag a man with money. A lot of money. And September of 1853 ended up being a very busy month for Caroline's social calendar. She celebrated her 23rd birthday on the 22nd. Then the very next day, she married William Astor. And I was able to find their marriage announcement in an archived edition of the Boston Evening Transcript from September 23rd, 1853. Here it is for you to see. I'm surprised that it's the last marriage on that list. Caroline dutifully pasted on a smile and married a man she barely tolerated at Trinity Church on that day. And very shortly thereafter, she addressed what you may have been thinking, that her husband's name also sounds like outhouse. So naturally, the lady who loved keeping up appearances asked him if he would please call himself William B. Astor instead of William Backhouse Astor. It doesn't seem that he granted her request. The truth is that he never really seemed to care about her or how she felt about anything. Their marriage was doomed from the start. But it didn't seem like it to those who were on the outside looking in. They started making a family right away. And at regular intervals, Caroline was with child. So that was an indication that they were at least having sex. Their first 4 children were girls. And about 10 years into the marriage, Caroline became pregnant with John Jacob Astor IV. And I've got to say that it seems like William wasn't going to stop until he had a boy. But he was going to stop after a boy came, because that's what happened. After the birth of a male heir secured, came the end of the Astor's sex life. Well, the end of Caroline's. William would go on to have a very active sex life with other women. William Backhouse Astor Jr. was everything Caroline despised, a playboy with no family name who was more interested in pleasure than responsibility. While she tried to build a respectable society life, he became busy building a reputation as one of New York's most notorious philanthropists. Philanderers. Since her marriage was a pile of nothing, Caroline focused all of her attention on building society, surrounding herself with a group of people she could force to admire her, since her husband didn't. This seemed to be the starting point of Caroline's grand, exclusive parties. They were just something to fill the void that was emphasized by her loveless marriage. And William had zero interest in Caroline's social ambitions. But not caring about them wasn't enough. He actively sabotaged them. He would come home drunk from his social clubs and crash her parties. He'd come stumbling into their home, yelling at Caroline's orchestra, telling them to stop playing, and he'd tell her guests that they'd have to leave too. Caroline was so humiliated, but surprisingly, she didn't let this ruin her society life. She got smarter. She started asking William's friends to keep him out late at his social clubs, desperately trying to prevent him from ruining her fancy dinner parties. And they obliged. So she got to move forward in her quest to become the queen of New York high society. As the years went on, William continued to carry on with other women. He made no effort to hide his sexual affairs. And that's bad enough, and quite the slap in Caroline's face. But to add insult to injury, William, knowing how much his wife cared about social class and her place in society, took particular interest in women of lower social classes. The kind of women Caroline would never have invited into her parties, the kind of women who proper ladies would never have had in their presence. He was very open about it, and he knew how embarrassing his actions were to Caroline. He seemed to live for the joy of embarrassing her. That was his favorite thing about their marriage, being able to publicly humiliate Caroline. He spent most of his time away from Caroline on his massive yacht, the Ambassadress, the largest private yacht in the world at that time. And just a quick side note, the Ambassadress was also the name of the yacht that belonged to Cornelius Vanderbilt, the great-grandson of Commodore Vanderbilt. Cornelius actually died on his yacht in 1942. But back to William Astor's yacht. The newspapers apparently nicknamed it the Floating Harem. I wasn't able to find any direct sources to show you that, and I searched, but that is written in a few books that covered the Astors. Caroline refused to set foot on his yacht. Her claim was that it made her seasick. That was likely a lie, though, because apparently a number of her rich friends had yacht parties in Newport, and she never showed any signs of seasickness at any of those parties. So, sounds suspicious. When William wasn't on his yacht, he was pursuing business interests in Florida, where he was surrounded by women of ill repute. I can't help but wonder if William Backhouse Astor was an inspiration for the hit song Boats and Hoes, the song from the movie Step Brothers that was on the Prestige Worldwide label. He may not have had such a swanky business name as Prestige Worldwide, but he did conduct some business in between rendezvous with his boat women. He founded the town of Astor, Florida, naming a nearby lake, Lake Schermerhorn, his wife's maiden name. I don't think that Caroline was flattered by that. But of course, his real interest was in the entertainment the area provided. Imagine every vice people indulge in when they visit Miami today. All of that stuff was going on in South Florida in the late 1800s as well. William was probably down there seeing a little more ankle and cleavage than he would have typically enjoyed seeing in New York. Speaking of New York, on the occasions that William returned home to New York, he and Caroline became so distant that they wouldn't even live under the same roof. William spent his time at their Hudson River estate called Ferncliff, while Caroline held court in their Fifth Avenue mansion. They were truly spouses for appearances only. In 1892, after nearly 40 years of this sham marriage, William delivered one final humiliation. He decided to die, and not at home with his wife, but an ocean away in Paris at the posh Hotel Liverpool. Even in death, he couldn't be bothered to be in the same country as Caroline. His death was reported to have been a quick one. He died suddenly of an aneurysm. The man who had spent decades publicly embarrassing his wife with his drinking and affairs had abandoned her one last time, leaving her a widow who had never truly gotten the opportunity to be a wife. Let's take a look at William's death announcement. Nothing is mentioned about his life with Caroline, just that he married her. And I'm not exaggerating. Here's a paragraph directly from his death announcement and a story featuring the highlights of his life. It's a quote from the April 27th, 1892 edition of the Mount Vernon Argus. Quote, "Immediately after his graduation, he commenced the roving life he has led ever since. In 1852, he returned home and became engaged to Caroline Schermerhorn of the famous family of that name. He married Miss Schermerhorn on September 23rd, 1853. End quote. And that ends the discussion about her. And one thing that we have to keep in mind here is that the Astors and Schermerhorns were powerful families, so there was only so much that the press was going to say about them that would show them in an unfavorable light. But here in this paragraph, we can read between the lines. Immediately after his graduation, he commenced the roving life he has led ever since. Well, that meant that his roving started before he met Caroline and continued after her, clearly until he died, leaving the entire Atlantic Ocean between himself and his wife. And if you watched The Gilded Age, you heard what Ward McAllister told Caroline about her husband preferring the company of showgirls on his yacht. That line didn't come out of thin air. Anyway, Caroline had to play the role of the dutiful wife till the very end. So she went to Paris for her husband's funeral, and that was one of the few times she got to be in Europe with him. She brought his body back to the U.S., also one of the few times she got to be on a boat with her husband. This is the woman who spent decades excluding divorced women from society, Caroline Astor, who endured public humiliation, alcoholism, affairs, and emotional abandonment, insisted that other women should be cast out for having the courage to legally end their miserable marriages. In the Gilded Age, when Charlotte confronts her mother about her terror of divorce, she's speaking a truth that cuts to the bone. Mrs. Astor lives a separate life from her husband, but maintains the fiction because the paperwork would ruin her position. Charlotte points out that her father is living it up on his yacht with younger women, and that's exactly what the real William Astor did for decades. Caroline Astor's crusade against divorced women wasn't about morality. It was about maintaining a system that allowed her to keep her power and position despite having one of the most dysfunctional marriages in Gilded Age New York, and that's saying a lot. She demanded that other women suffer in silence, just as she had, because admitting that marriage could be legitimately ended would expose her own decades of humiliation. Perhaps if she'd had the courage to file for a divorce, she would have been too embarrassed to tell her New York society friends why she wanted a divorce. Not that she would have had to say much. People already knew about how bad her marriage was, but they just seemed to whisper behind her back about it. The woman who crowned herself the ultimate authority of American society was living the biggest lie of all, that her marriage was anything more than a business arrangement that enabled her social reign. William Astor didn't love her, and every divorced woman she cast out was a reminder of the courage she never had to escape her own marital prison. And even in the wake of her husband's death, Caroline used that time to bash her daughter, Charlotte, about her marriage that was falling apart and was headed for divorce. Charlotte's bad marriage and pending divorce had caused her dear old dad's heart to stop working. Not his alcoholic beverages and women less than half his age. Here's what was written in the Evening World about William's death. Let's start with the headline. William Astor dead. He passed away last night in Hotel Liverpool, Paris. Heart failure reported to have been the cause. He was third in the list of America's millionaires. His fortune estimated at nearly $60 million. Worry over the late Drayton scandal had greatly prostrated him. Of course, we're going to focus on that last section. Worry over the late Drayton scandal had greatly prostrated him. So first, let's talk about this Drayton scandal briefly. If you watched The Gilded Age, you saw the talk about a duel that was threatened between Charlotte Astor's husband and her lover. Here's the rundown of that situation. Charlotte Astor had an affair with Charlotte Alsop Barrow. Her husband, J. Coleman Drayton, challenged Barrow to a duel in Paris in 1892, but it never happened. Instead, Barrow hilariously boarded the same steamship as Drayton back to New York, essentially daring him to follow through, which he did not. And of course, this affair ignited divorce rumors. That's the reason Caroline was so cold to her daughter on the show, because it smelled like divorce was in the air. This was all going on right before William died. But to get back to that last part of the headline, it's highly unlikely that he was so prostrated, so worried about this situation that it caused his death. Remember, he didn't give a darn about any of that society business. Nevertheless, here's what the paper printed in a section titled, Worried by the Drayton Barrow Scandal. Quote, it is said that ever since last fall, when Drayton and his wife had a violent falling out over the attentions which she was receiving from Mr. Barrow, the fear that the scandal would be brought to public attention has been hanging over the parents of Mrs. Drayton. Now, it says parents, but I think that we know that that's just Caroline. Anyway, back to the paper. Matters were hushed up at the time, and a compromise effected in which the compact between Drayton and his wife, which played so important a role in breaking off the arrangements for the duel, was signed by both parties, and Drayton agreed not to sue for a separation as he had threatened to do. The knowledge of the incident of Hotel Victoria in London, where Drayton surprised his wife and Barrow taking dinner together in a private room in January last, had evidently came to Mrs. Astor before the close of the social season, and this may have hastened her departure for Europe, which was several weeks earlier than she was usually accustomed to go abroad, end quote. So there you see it. The scandal caused Caroline Astor grief and so much embarrassment that she left the country more quickly than she normally would have. I want to be clear also here that I'm not 100% sure if Caroline was with William when he died. Some of the sources say that she was in New York, while others say that she was with him in Paris already. So full disclosure, I'm just not sure about that part. And trying to sort it out held me up in getting this story out to you. So sorry, I apologize. Let me know if there are any more real-life Gilded Age topics that you want me to cover. I know that a few of you wanted more details on that duel that never happened between Charlotte's husband and her lover. I'd be happy to tell you about that story. Until the next video, hurrah for the fact that the Gilded Age is greenlit for a 4th season. Are we to expect William's death in season 4? Since we haven't really seen him, it's going to be interesting to see what's in store for Caroline Astor's storyline and everyone else's. And speaking of boats and hoes, Dorothy Gibson was a first-class passenger on the Titanic. She would have likely shared a meal or two with Caroline Astor's son, Titanic's richest passenger, John Jacob Astor IV. She was a silent film star who slept her way to the top, and thankfully for her, she didn't have Caroline Astor's watchful eyes judging her every move. But luckily for you, you can if you watch my video about her here. I'll also leave links to it in the description box and the pinned comment. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your day. My sources for this story are on the screen. This video has been brought to you by me. Well, me and my new YouTube channel, Verified YouTube Guide. Are you just starting your YouTube journey and feeling overwhelmed? Don't worry, I've got you covered. My channel, Verified YouTube Guide, is your go-to resource for practical, step-by-step tips to grow and monetize your channel. It's literally follow-along video tutorials. I'm showing you the steps I took to get 180,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you don't know how to do something, you can just copy my work one step at a time. From setting up your channel to showing you how you can earn money at any stage on YouTube. And I'm not just talking about YouTube ad revenue. If you have something important to say or a service to sell, start talking about it on YouTube now. Don't wait. Subscribe to Verified YouTube Guide today, and let's build your channel together. You don't have to figure this out alone. The link is in the description box. I'll see you there. I hope that you have enjoyed this tale so far. If you love these scandalous stories from history that make Ty's Hot Mess History a time capsule for the culture, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Give this video a thumbs up. It's free and helps a ton. Whether you're watching or listening, thank you for letting me be a part of your day.